My next guest is Police Officer Dan Maloney, the Director of our Emergency Management for Clarkstown Police. Welcome, Officer Maloney. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
So delighted to have you. I know this is a new and role for you in the department, taking over for Sergeant McCormick as the Emergency Management Coordinator for the Clarkstown Police Department, and it's a very critical role within the town. You juggle a lot of things in the air, a lot going on, right?
Yes, yeah, to say the least, yep.
So you've got some really great background. So before we get into what our emergency management office does, maybe we could learn a little bit about you and your background, where you were born and raised, how long you've been a police officer.
Sure. So a product of the Clarkstown schools. I graduated from Clarkstown North in 1996. I then went to RCC for a couple of years. I graduated from John Jay with a degree in criminal justice. Shortly thereafter, in 2002, I joined the New York City Police Department. I went to the NYPD, went to the academy, where I did most of my time in housing, assigned to different housing bureaus, did some time with the housing crime, anti-crime unit. Almost about 9.5 years. My last year relieving there when I was offered employment by Clarkstown PD, I left out of the 4-3 Detective Bureau.
Right. So. And so you were in the NYPD for a good number of years, and as I understand it now, you're up here in Clarkstown just more than the amount of time you were in the NYPD, right?
Yeah, just this October, I now officially have more time in Clarkstown than I did in the city, which will bring me just to about 20 years this July.
Wow. So, and thank you for your continuing service. You know, it's a special calling and a special career in law enforcement, where oftentimes you're seeing people at their worst moment or their worst day, that they're ever going to experience, and you're there, trying to help. So thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about, aside from being a police officer, you're also involved in, and it's kind of a nice mix, the emergency volunteer fire services, right?
That's right. About just over 20 years with the volunteer fire department. My home fire department now would be Nanuet. I started there in 2009 when I purchased my home in Nanuet in 08, but then I transferred fire departments to Nanuet. And then about 2 years ago, just taking a more active role in the firehouse, I ran for commissioner, and I was elected to a 5-year term as on the Board of Commissioners. Right. So I like it. I like it a lot. Getting a little older now, so I like to drive. I'll take the front seat as opposed to the back.
Right. You're not necessarily looking to with some of the younger guys, like kind of doing that. But that's great. Right. It's really great. So that really gives you a nice flavor and a nice taste. You bring a different component than Sergeant McCormick had. Sergeant McCormick was was in the role for a good number of years, and was fortunate to be promoted to lieutenant, and so now you're in filling the spot. So, tell me a little bit about the emergency management office and how many officers are kind of involved. And you were kind of involved beforehand. You were kind of in training, if you will, working with Sergeant McCormick. So, tell us a little bit about some of the officers that are involved with our emergency response and what takes place when there's an incident here in the town.
Sure. So about 6-7 years ago, as still being assigned to patrol, one of the additional tasks or projects we took on was working with Sergeant McCormick to do the emergency management, more of as like a part-time helper, and sort of getting my feet wet and getting indoctrinated into the emergency management. Like you said, as of just as soon when you get promoted, I moved now into the full-time position. So with that, I have 3 other police officers that work with me. They're still on patrol, and one's assigned to community affairs, but they help as well. From everything from, in the event of a major storm or weather-related incident that may require us to open the Emergency Operations Center, these are my go-to guys that I use now to, when we invite in Orange and Rockland and Suez and the Highway Department, Verizon, whoever it may be, to assist in that emergency management. These are the guys that are going to help me. They're the ones that are going to set things up like that. So, so for example, we're on the screen. We're looking at incidents that have taken place with car train, fuel spills. So the Clarkstown Police would, if it takes place within our town, we're looking at a fuel spill now. Yep, that was right in New City.
And so tell us what happens with, what's the emergency response and what's required? People don't understand there's a lot that's required with something like that.
Tremendous amount. So in a situation like that, upwards of over 50 gallons of diesel was actually spilling out onto the parking lot, down onto Little Tor Road. Initial officers on the scene call, say this is what we've got. Anything over 5 gallons, we're obligated to notify the New York State spill control, pull a control number. So I'm en route to the scene. We do what's called, we're incident command structure works very well. So we implement what's called ICS, we do a unified command. So it's not just one, hey, I show up, I'm a police officer, this is my show. It's not like that, it takes teamwork. That particular incident was New City Fire Department, the chief shows up, and this is where having the background with the fire department, I know who he is. So we're not strangers meeting for the first time at a bad situation. He knows what he has to do, I know what I have to do, he knows what I can do, I know what he can do.
Right.
So now it's, all right, what do you need from me? What do I need from you? Well, we got to pull a spill control number. We have to protect the environment. We're protecting the community. Do you want me to put cops to block the road to prevent people from driving through it? That'd be great, Dan. What do you need from me? Can I get some fire department guys to put speedies right down to stop it from getting into a storm drain, to at least take a defensive approach before we move into the now clean up, finding out why, fault, cause, things like that. Help from the county. Chris Keir came down. How can I offer assistance? I think we have to set up a decon, hazmat situation. Sure, they call in their mutual aid. They get their trucks in. They get their program in to help with the decon. I think Nyack Fire Department came up, but it's one of those things where having this relationship now, I don't. Right. Even if I don't know 100% exactly who they're calling, I know someone needs to be called. They're handling it.
Right.
Our guys, I had our traffic guys were there. We're great. Listen, we have cones in the car, this, and this, we'll direct traffic. Fantastic. If you can just keep them out of the spill, that'd be great.
And we're looking at some of the other pictures, some of these are just random random shots, like this, this is a terrible accident that took place on Old Mill Road.
Right, and it's one of those things where it's an accident where it's just routinely handled by patrol. I don't want to say that everything's really routine on patrol, but
right.
It's an accident. They handle several of them a day. In this particular situation, you now have diesel spilling out, potentially leaking in towards the cracks in the pavement, getting into the wetlands.
Right.
Yep. So now it moves from just a basic, hey, I have an accident here with some fuel spill, to now it's a hazmat situation. Where do we go from here? Who are we going to call in as an environmental decon team to help clean this up, to make sure it's done right? Ultimately, you don't want to brush it over and do what's necessarily the easiest. A lot of times it gets drawn out just to make sure it's done right.
Right. And some of the other scenes we were looking at was typical flooding that took place over in Route 59 in West Nyack. And then, trees down, storms, and let's talk a little bit about that and what takes place during major snow incidents or major, hurricanes when we open up our EOC. Maybe you could talk about what takes place with that.
Sure. So it always becomes the catch-22 of what happens first. So when you have trees down, wires down, you don't want to put the highway in to cut up a tree before you know that the scene is safe and that the wires have been, the grid has been killed and we know it's safe. It's been de-energized. But then when you have the Orange and Rockland, they come out, they won't remove trees, or they won't really start repairing the lines until the trees are removed. So it sort of becomes that interweaving, and that's where the EOC works fantastic, when we have these representatives from all these different agencies there, where I can talk to two people and say, hey, listen, O&R's on their way, can you have the tree crew on standby ready to go? Absolutely, my tree crew's standing by waiting once you get the green light from O&R, and they're sitting right there across the room, as opposed to having to make phone calls. The communication just works so much better.
Right.
And that's sort of what we do there, and it sort of becomes as the coordinator, getting all the key players there, so you can just facilitate the rapid, not rapid, but more of an expedited response to ultimately getting the roads open, the trees removed, and the power lines restored.
Right.
Nobody wants to be without power.
Well, and people, they don't hear, they hear about it, but they don't really understand what takes place. So I'm over in the EOC fairly frequently when we open them up. Depending on the event, we'll determine if we have to open up ahead of time, and then you guys make the call, with the EOC being opened up. And then typically what will happen is we'll have a representative from the highway department, and we'll have somebody from Orange and Rockland on scene, or over the phone, And literally, there's the same people in the room. We maintain spreadsheets through the police department, so we're logging everything in, and then we're able to kind of track through the spreadsheets of what the incidents are. And people don't realize, like, some of these major, storm incidents, people will be calling, and we'll have, what we're looking at, thankfully, we won't be dealing with this anymore because because we got the lines buried under the causeway, but the lines being down in over on the causeway. But literally, we'll have 150 calls,
Yeah.
And like, here's for example, is would be a board that would be set up, for an incident, right?
Right, so that's just, and again, under the umbrella of emergency management, that one in particular was a suspicious device. That becomes one of those things also where, although the term emergency management, it applies to every emergency. That was Clarkstown South, that was several years ago when there was like a suspected device in the building. Again, being familiar with how the incident command structure works, it's one of those things where now you set up your whiteboard, you have your accountability. It becomes more of just, and again, utilizing that unified command, you have all these other agencies coming in. State police come in. I think we called several bomb dogs from all over the county to come in to start doing the sweep of the school. Well, who's the accountability for that? Who's letting the sergeant lieutenant at the time? I think the lieutenant actually came in, was the first, it was the highest ranking officer at that time.
Right.
He comes in, how do I know what's going on? What's happening? There's my board.
Yeah, you can see, I showed up at that scene, so like
Yeah, there you go.
1541, town supervisor on the scene. The chief Wanamaker, Chief McCullough, Captain Wanamaker on scene.
Yep.
So literally, as soon as we heard about it, we were down there. And it was, if I remember, that was like a training device that was,
Yeah.
in the end. So some poor kid lost his training
Cement,
device. It
yeah,
ended up
a weight,
going,
homemade weight.
Homemade weights getting
Right, and that's one of those things where and it's as people get introduced or leave, and it makes it so much easier when you apply that. Where now as you come in, hey, what's going on? Where are we at? It's so much the visual presentation of, let me look at this board, let me see what's going on. Okay. Instead of having to retell the story over and over again, you go in, you see it. As long as it's done somewhat right or started as early as possible, and you know what you're doing, and I trust my guys, they know what they're doing, they kind of jump on that right away. It does that transition so much easier when, especially like a long-term event, like a big storm. I'll stay there as long as I can. At some point, physically, you can't keep your eyes open. So now when you have to turn over, if I need one of my guys, hey, listen, can you stay for a couple hours? This is where we're at. I'll fill up the whole board with notes and times and where resources have been allocated, just so they can kind of pick up, run with it a little bit, and then when I come back, we'll take back over.
I'll never forget, we had that freak snow incident where it took people like 8 hours to get home. It was like three years ago. I was in the police department in the EOC, and there were like 180 jobs or calls that were just like, we don't have 180 officers, so and it was just cars stuck here and there, or whatever else. So people call it, but we have to log it all, to track it all. We have to make decisions on what road gets closed, what resources had to get deployed. We're dealing in a town where we have a town highway department, we have town roads, county roads, state roads, different levels of authority. So having the unified command system, and it's a national model. That so if you left Clarkstown and you went to a different town, they're still going to be operating under those same principles and that same system. Now, honestly, in Clarkstown, we're second to none here in terms of the other towns, in terms of our focus on emergency management. We've heard that from others. We just heard it the other day from Orange and Rockland. We had a big meeting with them, and they kind of talked about what we do in Clarkstown is we really kind of lead the way. So you're keeping up with that great tradition. We've had some really strong emergency management coordinators within the police department. It's not an easy job. When I'll be out on television or on the radio trying to update the residents about different storm events or whatever, I'm now typically talking to you and Norm Peters, our PIO, to kind of get the latest update. And you guys are great about it because you're so thorough and organized people don't realize what goes into managing an incident and how many incidents we actually have. We've got a lot of weather-related events. We have, tragic incidents where we've got to shut down a road. We have investigations. Everything from a fuel spill to a weather event, something like a bomb scare. And,
Right.
these are major incidents, that you become the lead person on. So
Yeah, and it's,
coordinate.
the last year presented a whole bunch of different obstacles with COVID, setting up the COVID testing sites. We worked with the Department of Health on that. That was something different. And then always just the afterwash of, critiquing what happened, what worked well, what needed improvement. And then as we just saw with Ida, like doing the FEMA follow-up and applying for the, to meet the threshold.
Right.
And stuff like that. So it's even when the waters recede, the job's
Yeah.
not over.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
not at all, not at all. We see, and you did a great job here with
Yep.
with setting this up and managing this. This is when we're doing the testing down at the Palisade Center.
The Department of
for
Health
COVID.
was fantastic with that. Just again, working well together. This is what we want to do, and getting the leeway and the support from you of, we work with the Palisades Mall. Can we go down there? Yep. Cops were assigned. It was run very well. There was no issue with traffic, one way in, one way out.
Right.
Sort of just the way they wanted it, and we were like, yeah, we can absolutely accommodate that. I went down and we made sure they were safe, people were safe, nobody got out of their car, so it was
Right.
good.
No, it was great. I mean, just wonderful. So Dan, we're out of time. I want to thank you for your service. Your 20 years now as a police officer, and your continuing service in this important role. We know you're going to continue to just raise the bar, in that role. So thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.